Let me tell you something that might change how you show up in life. Not everything needs your reaction. People will test you, life will shake you, words will be thrown your way like darts, but your power isn't in how loud you respond, it's in how still you stay. No need to join every dispute you're drawn into, and learning to let some conversations pass by without reaction is one of the strongest choices you'll ever make. It begins with understanding that not every exchange requires your participation. Sometimes the only role you need to play is observer, quiet and composed as the noise swirls around. Recognize that others may try to drag you into conflict, to provoke a response, and what they get instead is your calm indifference. You stay grounded, you stay clear, you stay yourself. When someone throws accusations or hostile opinions your way, the impulse might be to push back, defend your reputation, or settle the score. But if you pause, you'll find that not all criticisms are worth your energy. Some are attempts to test your resolve. Others aim to uncover your weakest point. But if you refuse to engage, you deny them that power. Your silence can be louder than any rebuttal. Take a moment right now. Imagine a situation that triggered your anger recently. You said something, you responded immediately. You stormed away, frustrated. Now replay that moment. This time do nothing. Stay still. Notice how the tension arises. Let it come. Breathe. Don't chase it. Feel grounded as the moment passes without your participation. Then notice how small it is, how little meaning it holds once you don't feed it with your reaction. By choosing not to attend every argument, you reclaim your energy, you protect your emotional health, you preserve your clarity. Each time you step away from needless drama, you demonstrate self-respect, showing yourself that your time and well-being are worth more than proving a point to someone who might not deserve your attention. When another person seeks to bait you, they rely on one thing, your willingness to engage. Don't give it. Their words might sting for a moment, but what lingers is the choice you made to remain quiet, to stay grounded, to live aligned with your priorities. Your actions reveal more about who you are than any speech could. You may ask, what about fairness, justice, doing the right thing? If standing up is necessary, do it. Challenge wrongdoing when it needs confrontation, but pick your battles. Not every slight needs an answer. Not every provocation demands an address. Learn the difference between situations that matter and ones that don't. This discernment is strength. Your surroundings might amplify conflict. Gossiping colleagues, impulsive family members. These environments tempt you into reacting. But in those moments you hold the power to choose stillness. You can neither affirm nor deny, you can simply observe. You can choose your silence as a statement. I will not be baited today. This isn't about ignoring problems or burying feelings. It's about pausing before you act. When your heart races, notice the tension in your chest. When your mind shouts to attack, let the impulse pass like a wave. Then speak only if your voice serves a purpose. Speak only when your words add value. Speak only when it aligns with your core. Practicing this is like planting seeds of confidence. Every time you walk away from a petty quarrel unshaken, you internalize a belief. Nothing outside can destabilize you. Over time, the mustard seed of confidence grows into an oak of unshakable calm. You're not at war with circumstances. You're at peace within yourself. And peace is not passive. It's an active decision. It asks you, are you more interested in being right or being resilient? Choosing the latter requires courage, because the world often rewards noise. It celebrates loud responses, but the quiet hold of inner strength is far more powerful. So the next time someone tries to pull you into a tug-of-war of opinions, choose otherwise. Let your refusal be your power. Let your absence in conflict speak volumes. Your time is precious. Your energy is scarce. Don't spend it trying to convince someone who would rather argue than understand. Imagine living this daily, waking up and before you even speak, you decide whether your words will build or break, heal or harm, matter or muddle. You refuse moments that would distract you from your purpose. You refuse drama dressed as a need for acknowledgement. You refuse to hand your peace to someone else just because they insist on taking it. You keep your presence gentle, your posture upright. You watch the chaos without flinching. Those watching will notice. They'll begin to treat your thoughts with more care. Even if they don't, who cares? You are the one who benefits most from your refusal to take unnecessary drama seriously. Let it become part of your identity, not a badge of superiority, but a sign of emotional maturity. When people speak of standing one's ground, they often picture stubborn resistance. But true firmness can coexist with a serene heart. The ability to stand firm by stepping aside is transcendence, not withdrawal. No single person can throw a shadow over you without your consent. Your attention is consent. Your response is consent. When you withhold both, You illuminate where your strength truly lies, in your autonomy, your emotional independence. This takes practice. At first your mind will rebel. It will demand explanations. Tell them where they're wrong. Show them you're not a pushover. Ignore those voices. Treat them like background noise. Keep centering yourself in what matters, your own growth, your own peace, your own direction. As the months pass, you'll find fewer and fewer invitations worth answering. You'll discover an inner filter that tells you what to approach and what to dodge. You'll know how to hold your ground without standing in line for conflict. You'll see the difference between reacting because you felt attacked and responding because you had something valuable to share. Your refusal to get entangled becomes a beacon. Others begin to admire your calm, even mimic it, and you'll be free from the chains of constant reactivity. You'll be free to think more clearly, to guide your life with intention, to invest your time in matters that truly matter. In the end, rejecting every invitation to argue isn't weakness. It's mastery. It's sovereignty. It's love for yourself. And that love, quiet, firm, unshakable, is the greatest statement you can make. There's a moment, just before a decision, when everything slows. A breath sits heavy. Muscles tighten slightly. That instant is where power hides. In that quiet pause exists a choice few recognize. Reclaiming that choice, understanding that inner pivot point, this transforms ordinary existence into extraordinary self-command. Choosing how to behave rather than reacting impulsively is a sign of internal discipline, not the harsh punishing kind that suppresses everything, but the strong, clear self-led version that protects inner peace. The ability to feel everything without becoming everything is a learned capability. Developing it is not suppression, it's intentionality. It's restraint born of clarity. Frustration, disappointment, and misunderstanding rise like waves, unannounced, catching even the most aware off guard. But emotional steadiness isn't about denying those experiences. It's about facing them without allowing them to carry you off course. It's saying, I acknowledge you, but I won't allow you to guide my words, actions, or decisions. That awareness doesn't silence emotions. It listens to them without being governed by them. Being grounded means remaining still, even while storms rage inside. It means being steady enough to respond rather than explode. And there's nothing passive about that. It's an act of strength, not suppression. Imagine responding with composure when intensity rises around you. Not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've taught your nervous system to hold space instead of reacting immediately. That is leadership over your own internal environment. That is true agency. Think of every relationship, personal, professional, casual. Think about how much damage impulsive reactions have caused. Regrets born not from what was felt, but how those feelings were unleashed. Communication suffers most when emotion drives, unchecked and unfiltered. But developing regulation by pausing, reflecting, and selecting a thoughtful path elevates every interaction. Stillness doesn't mean nothing's happening. It means everything's being considered. That's the real discipline. The decision to choose behavior that aligns with integrity, even when everything inside pushes for the opposite. That takes maturity. That takes presence. It doesn't mean detachment. Quite the opposite. Feeling deeply while remaining poised is a rare and powerful skill. It's mastery of self, not masking of truth. In tense environments, the calmest person becomes the anchor. Not because they don't feel, because they refuse to be hijacked by fleeting impulses. Developing this begins with attention. Noticing your triggers, observing your inner responses, understanding what sets off your internal alarms. Then comes regulation, not denial. Regulation means you acknowledge your storm without letting it define your output. You steer your way through it. This takes work. It takes practice. It requires learning how to name what's happening inside without being consumed by it. You might feel rage, sadness, betrayal, or fear. You let yourself notice those things, but you hold your tongue. You relax your shoulders. You slow your breathing. You refuse to be a puppet of the moment. This doesn't remove the truth of how you feel. It simply puts you back in control of how you show up. And that, more than anything, protects your dignity. When you choose your actions consciously, you become someone others trust, not because you're emotionless, but because you're stable, you're dependable. You don't bring chaos to every moment. You bring consistency. That builds credibility. That builds trust. That builds influence. We often forget, influence doesn't belong to the loudest. It belongs to the most composed. In moments of tension, the one who speaks least, but listens hardest, who acts last but thinks first, gains authority. They don't steal attention. They earn respect. Responding thoughtfully, without aggression, earns something no outburst ever will: long-term impact. When you choose dialogue over eruption, restraint over volatility, grace over retaliation, you're making an investment. And people remember that. Not because you won, but because you stayed grounded when it was hardest. You can carry deep passion without becoming explosive. You can feel anger without expressing cruelty. You can process sorrow without turning bitter. You can name harm without becoming harmful. That is what emotional discipline looks like. And it starts with a belief
that you are strong enough to hold complexity, that you can withstand waves of feelings without becoming them, that you don't need to act on every feeling immediately, that your highest self doesn't vanish the moment things get difficult. It means holding boundaries, even with yourself. It means saying, I don't like how I feel right now, but I'm not going to make others responsible for managing my discomfort. That's accountability. That's maturity. Sometimes emotional discipline looks like walking away. Other times, it looks like pausing mid-sentence. Often it looks like silence. Not because you're avoiding, but because you're discerning. Because you care more about clarity than dominance. Because you're leading, not reacting. There will always be tests. People pushing buttons. Tension rising, egos colliding. But every test is an opportunity to demonstrate how far you've come. Not to impress others, but to affirm who you've become. When you choose to respond rather than react, you reinforce your values. You say through behavior, this is who I am, no matter what's thrown at me. That's integrity. That's strength. That's presence. You will find over time that emotional regulation becomes your default. What once took great effort now feels natural. Your relationships will shift. Your peace will deepen. Your focus will sharpen. And perhaps most importantly, you'll feel proud. Not because you controlled others, but because you finally mastered yourself, and that kind of self-mastery, that's rare, that's liberating, that's everything.
When that internal shift finally takes root, everything begins adjusting outward. Realizing that your grounding, your calm, isn't performance but identity, reshapes how you interact with every part of existence. Remaining firm yet unshaken becomes less about resisting force, more about understanding control through unwavering stillness. Remaining unaffected doesn't mean detachment, it's awareness, acknowledgement, and deliberate positioning. When surroundings erupt, remaining composed confuses chaos. It halts momentum, disarms escalation. A steady heartbeat in disorder becomes a signal. This environment doesn't own me. Maintaining that center takes presence. Noise won't stop. Pressure keeps coming. Irregular behavior around you isn't pausing for your convenience. But something stronger than chaos exists inside still people. That quiet resolve doesn't flinch, doesn't retreat, and most importantly, doesn't mirror disruption. That's how calmness wins without confrontation. True strength isn't in reaction, it's found in intentionality. External factors can only influence outcomes if permitted to breach your internal compass. Reactions built on automatic habits weaken you. Responses rooted in still clarity reinforce endurance. Strength isn't about volume. It's in your rootedness, your calm presence amidst shifting terrain. You can walk through noise without becoming it. Let turmoil surround you, voices rising, gestures flying, atmosphere shifting. None of it matters unless you absorb it. Refusing entry into your inner framework is power. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer, setting emotional temperature rather than measuring it. When you're anchored, manipulation loses effect. Provocation misses its target. Passive-aggressive jabs become background sounds. The opponent loses interest because the performance stops drawing applause. You no longer dance to rhythms composed by others. You establish your own tempo, one that doesn't accelerate based on external urgency. Stillness removes dependency. It eliminates the need for external validation. It's no longer about who understands your approach or agrees with your restraint. Peace becomes personal, a private decision. It doesn't shout, it simply exists, thriving within your chest, like a quiet fire, unseen but undeniable. Some think not reacting is surrender. Quite the opposite. It's command. It's saying, I decide how I show up. That decision isn't temporary. It's built through repetition. Not every day will be perfect, but consistency builds identity. You teach yourself that you are safe in your own presence. Watch someone truly centered. Their eyes soften during arguments. Posture stays open. Breathing remains slow. There's no panic, no grasping for dominance. Instead, there's intention behind every word, measured, meaningful, minimal. They don't need dominance because they already possess internal confidence. This doesn't remove emotion. It includes it in a new way. Emotion becomes informative, not directive. Feelings knock at your door. They don't break it down. You decide which to greet, which to entertain, which to send away with kindness but firmness. And nobody sees this internal work happening, but they all feel its effects. Discipline in speech becomes natural. Tone shifts. Words carry depth. Pauses become tools. You stop rushing to fill silence. Instead, you allow quiet to carry its own message. There's power in what remains unsaid, when backed by presence. People lean in when volume doesn't fight for attention. Imagine walking into high-stakes situations, not to control others, but to preserve your alignment. Imagine not needing everyone to agree, not feeling anxious when opinions differ, not personalizing disagreement. You don't become numb, you become stable. That kind of presence changes rooms. People notice without knowing exactly what's different. Disagreements begin to sound like dialogue, not combat. You listen fully, not to respond but to understand. You're not playing chess, you're honoring clarity. You value truth over victory, and because of that you hear what others miss. You feel what others ignore. That's because you're still. Stillness lets you access awareness beyond the surface. It sharpens instincts. You begin recognizing intentions without needing confirmation. You sense friction before words confirm it. You notice energy shifts, body language, tones, but instead of being overwhelmed, you hold space for observation without engagement. That's discernment rooted in calm. You no longer fear tension. You welcome it as a chance to practice your grounding. Every interaction becomes a mirror, reflecting back your progress. Moments that once sparked panic now feel like invitations to remain steady. Your baseline no longer fluctuates based on external input. Even during confrontation, you stand firm, not aggressively, not passively, just unwavering. You allow others to bring intensity without matching it, and in doing so you remove their power to steer you. They can scream, accuse, insult, but without your alignment, their efforts dissipate like steam in cold air. Every time you refuse to react emotionally to instability, you reinforce the truth. Your peace isn't for sale. It isn't fragile. It isn't circumstantial. It's cultivated. And anything cultivated holds value. You protect it, not with walls, but with grounded self-awareness. That protection doesn't isolate, it frees. You can engage fully without fear of losing yourself. You can care without collapsing. You can help without absorbing. You stop trying to fix what isn't yours. You start recognizing what energy belongs to you and what belongs elsewhere. Still, people walk slower, speak softer, smile longer, not because they're passive, but because they've trained themselves to find freedom in pause. Nothing hurries them anymore. And the fewer things that rush you, the more life opens up around you. There's courage in stillness, the courage to not react when it's expected, the courage to maintain poise when ego demands a rebuttal, the courage to sit through discomfort without needing escape. That bravery builds character more than any victory ever will. Eventually, being calm becomes less of a tactic and more of a lifestyle. You no longer perform calmness, you embody it. No mask, no script, just a deep, reliable way of showing up. You start becoming someone others feel safe around, because you don't bring panic, you bring presence. And that presence isn't about being untouched, it's about not being ruled. You walk through fire, wind and rain, but you remain centered, because being centered is no longer what you do, it's who you are. Guarding that personal sanctuary requires decisiveness. Every interaction, each exchange, even brief moments with strangers, offers opportunities to demonstrate whether your sense of self belongs solely to you, or whether it's distributed to whoever demands it. That clarity doesn't happen by accident. It's earned through practice, reflection, and consistency. People will challenge your emotional limits, not maliciously always, but because they haven't been taught how to honor boundaries themselves. And the ones who haven't mastered their emotions tend to test yours the most. They'll press, prod, and poke, looking for signs that they can shape your reactions, influence your tone, derail your composure. Refusing to surrender internal harmony doesn't mean distancing yourself from humanity. It means creating internal guardrails. You decide which subjects deserve your attention. You determine where conversations begin and end. No explanation is required when your refusal is peaceful and unwavering. Keeping emotional sovereignty intact means accepting discomfort without absorbing it. Let their disapproval echo. Let their assumptions remain uncorrected. If you spent every day correcting misunderstandings, you'd never get to live fully. Your intention knows the truth. That truth doesn't need universal agreement to remain valid. Establishing this mental foundation takes resolve, not stubbornness, awareness. You can smile without giving away your emotional keys. You can engage while maintaining privacy. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every comment requires a defense. You get to decide what deserves access. Consider how many hours vanish attempting to explain yourself to those uninterested in understanding. The exhaustion doesn't come from speaking. It comes from giving yourself to places that never respected the offering. And when you recognize that, you begin reclaiming your emotional time. Creating clear thresholds teaches people how to treat you. It doesn't require confrontation. It requires clarity. Instead of arguing, simply refrain. Instead of over-explaining, calmly walk away. Instead of defending, remain neutral. Your neutrality speaks louder than most arguments. Not everyone gets to see your full emotional range. Not because you're guarded, but because you're intentional. There's freedom in realizing that availability is a choice. That choice allows you to conserve your spirit for places that reciprocate, for people who don't drain but uplift. Sometimes protecting your center means sitting in silence as tension rises, not out of fear but wisdom, not because you're dismissive but grounded. And in those moments others may accuse you of detachment. Let them.
You're not avoiding connection, you're respecting your own peace. Your refusal to engage doesn't stem from superiority, it's rooted in discipline. Emotional generosity is valuable, but it cannot be infinite. Emotional fatigue is real. By maintaining boundaries, you keep your mind strong, you keep your focus intact, you avoid burnout born from overextension. Peace isn't something you receive from others, it's a boundary you maintain regardless of conditions. If kindness is mistaken for weakness, so be it. If quiet is mistaken for guilt, let them think it. You're not responsible for reshaping distorted interpretations. You're responsible for honoring truth within yourself. You owe no one the version of you they prefer. You owe yourself the version that remains whole. If you contort constantly to meet expectations, you become unrecognizable. Maintaining boundaries ensures you don't lose yourself while accommodating others. It guarantees that your essence stays intact through seasons of change. Even those close to you might resist your emotional growth, especially if your calm challenges their chaos. But peace often disrupts dysfunction. You don't have to match their emotional temperature. You don't have to shrink your stillness to comfort someone else's instability. Detachment from unnecessary emotional labor brings clarity. Suddenly relationships shift. Connections based on guilt or obligation dissolve. Space emerges for mutual respect, for honest communication without manipulation. When your boundaries become known, only the right people stay. That doesn't mean walls. It means doors with locks, only opening when it feels safe, mutual, real. You're not shutting the world out. You're letting the right energies in. And that selectivity isn't selfish, it's sustainable. You cannot pour endlessly without ever refilling. Watch what happens when you stop justifying every choice. Observe the reactions when you stop cushioning your truth to protect others from discomfort. At first there may be pushback. That pushback is proof you've stopped people-pleasing and started self-respecting. And there's an undeniable difference between being difficult and being discerning. You're not hard to love. You've just learned to love yourself enough to stop tolerating inconsistency. That love forms an emotional perimeter, a space where honesty, kindness, and care can thrive. With each boundary honored, you reinforce your worth. You remind yourself that your feelings matter, that your time matters, that your presence isn't a favor, it's a privilege. When someone proves incapable of meeting you with that understanding, you don't retaliate, you recenter. This isn't isolation, it's alignment. You're not lonely, you're full of purpose, full of self-awareness, full of clarity. And the fewer people you allow into your emotional circle, the more meaningful those connections become. Quality replaces quantity. Strength isn't loud. Protection doesn't always look like armor. Sometimes it looks like stepping back. Sometimes it's declining invitations to conflict. Sometimes it's pausing before responding to provocation. And in those choices you build resilience. You begin recognizing what's real and what's reaction. You see beneath words into intention. You hear tones that say more than sentences. That intuition guides you away from patterns that once consumed your time and energy. Let others think you've changed. Let them say you're distant. The reality is you're evolving. You've stopped performing peace and started living it. You've stopped handing out your emotional bandwidth like flyers. You've learned to save your breath for places that feel sacred. This isn't perfection. You'll still slip. You'll still feel tested. But each moment you reinforce your boundary, even slightly, you rewrite your story. No longer someone who absorbs everything. No longer someone who entertains every emotional intrusion. You've stopped giving your spirit away at a discount. You've begun treating your peace like the rare, precious, non-renewable gift it is. And in doing that, you've stepped into the fullest, most grounded version of who you were always meant to be.